We're four friends with hot takes on food media.
And we're here to review and recap all kinds of food shows in bite-sized seasons.
Plus, virtual potlucks, cooking adventures, and food memes.
Welcome to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
Hey everyone, it's Justine.
And it's me, Meg. And welcome to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes and the start of a brand new season. This time we're covering Sweet Heat with Rick Martinez, a Food52 YouTube series. Rick brings us recipes built on his favorite flavor profiles, sweet and heat, from his kitchen in Mazatlán, Mexico. On the menu for today's episode, we have mole sencillo and Sohla and Rick swap cookies and shows. And I'm just going to apologize at the beginning of the season for any poor Spanish pronunciation on my part. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school and it's all gone from my head. Japanese completely replaced it.
Oh, wow.
I'm also going to apologize if I ever accidentally typo sweet heat as sweat heat on Twitter, because that has almost happened more than once already. So it might. But before we get into Sweet Heat, let's find out what we've been cooking and eating and all that jazz. Justine, what have you been up to?
Oh, I've been super busy, so I haven't had a chance to extravagantly cook as I am packing up my kitchen right now. But I did make something yesterday, a recipe that I've made before, but I don't think I've mentioned here before. Nisha Vora has a recipe, and it's called The Best Tofu Scramble. And I've made a lot of scrambles in my time.
And a lot of tofu.
Yes. And this is actually really freaking good and easy. It's done in like a way that I've never prepared a scramble before, where you do your typical breaking up the tofu and sauteing that up. But then on the side, you make what she calls an eggy sauce. And that is comprised of turmeric, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, chipotle, kala namak, tahini, nutritional yeast, and milk.
So it's not
vegan. And I know I said paprika.
Paprika.
A vegan milk of your choice, like an almond milk or an
Okay, well,
milk.
we can also apologize for just our poor pronunciation in general. I think that that's a good disclaimer to have.
So, like, generally, you make, like, a scramble by just adding spices directly to the tofu. But, like, making this sort of, like, liquid spice mixture with the milk and just pouring it on top and then continuing to cook, I think is just, like, fantabulous. I don't know. It's just, I think it helps distribute the spices more evenly. Mm-hmm. And then you get, like, the squishiness of it as, like, the milk cooks with the tofu. Mm-hmm. To get that real scrambled egg texture. I do quite enjoy this, and it's super, super easy.
It sounds great. I like a scramble.
Yeah, you can like do your like onions before if you want that. I always add like a couple handfuls of spinach after, just wilt it down. That's how I like my scrambles. You can add tomato, whatever you want, but like this is the base. Thumbs up.
Yeah, now that I've been cooking with tofu more, it's a nice, clean palette to start from, a nice empty palette. But I do find it hard to get a lot of flavor into the tofu itself. Like, I've marinated a lot of tofus now, but even marinating tofu, I feel like you get more spice and flavor with the sauce or with the breading or with what you're adding along with the tofu.
Yeah, I suggest it. It's good. All right, what have you been cooking, Meg?
I decided just to lean in with the Rick Martinez theme. So I made sticky rice with coconut and mango by Rick Martinez. Now, I don't want to be one of those people who is like, I made all of these changes to the recipe and it didn't turn out so great, but that's kind of what happened here. But I'll just say up front, I know it's my fault, mea culpa. There were many changes I made that I probably shouldn't have. So it's a pretty simple recipe. It calls for coconut milk, Thai sweet rice, brown sugar or palm sugar, salt, fresh mango, and lime zest and lime juice, and a little bit of toasted sesame seeds for garnish. So I didn't have any Thai sweet rice, so mistake number one. All I had was brown basmati rice, which I know is not the same thing at all, but that's what I used. And also As I've mentioned many a time on this podcast, my husband doesn't eat sweets. So I was like, well, maybe I'll make this dish and just not add the sugar. And I know that the stickiness comes from the sugar. I realize that. But somehow I convinced myself, I was like, maybe there's something in the magical preparation that still makes it a little bit sticky. And the answer is no. If you don't add the sugar, you're not going to get sticky rice. But the flavor was still pretty good.
Wow.
Personally, I think it could have been more coconutty because for the coconut milk, you soak the rice in the coconut milk and water for several hours. And then you use a little bit of that coconut milk and water mixture to actually cook the rice in itself. But it didn't impart a lot of coconut flavor. And sticky coconut rice recipes that I've made before often use coconut cream, and this didn't use coconut cream at all. So I feel like that was one thing that wasn't my fault that could have been improved upon. But it was still pretty tasty. I liked the addition of the lime zest and the lime juice. It was good.
Delicious. I had a sticky coconut rice and mango recently from a Thai place, and it was delicious, and they shaped it in the shape of a little bear.
Oh, cute. Nice.
He was a little bear in his bed of mango and a little blanket of extra coconut.
That's adorable.
And then I stabbed into his little head and paws and ate it.
There was one time when I was a little kid and I asked for a Care Bear birthday cake, and my mom very nicely obliged. And but then I insisted upon eating the entire head at my birthday party. I was like, no, I get the whole head.
Wow.
So anyway, all that to say, I approve of bear-shaped food. All right, should we get into Sweet Heat?
Yeah, super excited.
Yeah, me too. All right, the first episode that we're covering is also the first episode of this series that was released. It's called Mole Sencillo, and the description is, first up, mole, one of the most famous sauces in Mexico because of their beautifully complex, smoky, sweet, hot flavor, their velvety, smooth texture, and their rich, deep color. Rick created this mole sencillo, or simple mole, with only 10 ingredients and a handful of steps. Think of it as a starter mole that will help you master the techniques used in making basically any mole. And then they link to the recipe.
A recipe show with recipes.
What? Yeah, first impressions is this is obviously an instructional cooking show. It gives you the recipe, it gives you all the steps, it teaches you technique. I think by the end of this show, we will have learned a thing or two.
Yeah, I am down. And, you know, I also made sure as I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is the first Sweet Heat video. And I was thinking about it from that context. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're already getting, like, the vibe of it's very chill. I like the behind the camera interactions that are happening.
Me too.
It's very
It is. And the little pop-up captions that are somewhat silly sometimes. I think Food52 is taking more than a few pages from Bon Appétit at the time.
Oh, I will say, and they may have changed it in the year or so that it's been up. I'm not a fan of the Food52 graphics package.
I don't particularly like the way that they've designed the little tooltips or the little captions on the side. I never noticed them, which I suppose could be a good or bad thing, but they're just kind of there. I feel like they don't really add anything to the show.
Meg, have you had a mole before?
I sure have. I lived in southern Arizona for several years, and mole is pretty big in Sonoran Mexican cooking and a lot of different types of Mexican cooking. Obviously, Rick is in Mazatlán at the moment, and he calls it one of the Mexican mother sauces. So there are a lot of different types of mole. I guess one of the through lines is usually nuts, sesame seeds, fruits, and chilies of some kind. But beyond that, there's a lot of variation. But of the moles I've had, overall, I've liked them. There's certain moles that I've liked better than others. But in general, I like a mole. It's probably not the first thing I would go to on a menu, though. What about you?
I don't think that I have had a mole before.
I think you would like it. Chocolate is pretty common in a lot of moles. He uses chocolate here. It adds that nice bittersweet flavor profile. And it doesn't have to be served over roast chicken. Obviously, that's what he does here. But I think you could put it over, I don't know, roast sweet potato or any number of other things.
Oh, yeah, I wrote that note down to ask. I'm like, as someone who doesn't eat chicken, what do you put it on?
some kind of veggie. And he also served it with rice.
Yeah.
I think, making your own rice dish and putting mole over it might be good.
I like the tips presented in this episode, like work quickly, prep early, weigh your ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Those tips can be applied to other things you're making. This is a pared down mole, he says, only 10 ingredients, one of them being animal crackers.
I thought that was really interesting. I put in my notes, animal crackers, ?
Animal crackers?
And he said, in fact, that it's a pretty common ingredient in mole recipes, which I found interesting. And he said it thickens the sauce and also that it kind of acts as that bridge between savory and sweet, which I wouldn't have thought of, but that makes total sense. Animal crackers are that nice. They have a little bit of savoriness, I think. They're one of the less sweet cookies out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, so instead of just adding like flour or cornstarch thickener, you're adding this flour-based item, which has already got some possible dairy and sugar infused.
Mm-hmm.
So that would save definitely a couple steps.
Yeah. I also liked his tip to measure by weight and not necessarily by number. Like you said, a chili is going to be very different in terms of size and density and weight. So it just makes more sense to go by weight instead of saying, oh, add 3 chilies. The more that I cook recipes that do go by weight instead of number measurement, it makes sense. I feel like it's something that American recipes should maybe adopt in general.
We learned about piloncillo.
Unrefined whole cane sugar.
So interesting because I was eating desserts with jaggery this weekend, which is, I think, pretty much like the Indian counterpart.
Mm-hmm. Did it come in a little pyramid or a little cone?
It can. Yeah, it can come in a variety of ways, but yeah, it can. And I was just thinking, like, man, like every place has one,
True, yeah.
So Rick makes this dish in a Vitamix, which is a very, very powerful blender. And then he says that you don't have to strain the mixture, but I would advise maybe strain if you don't have a Vitamix.
Vitamix blend amazingly. We have a Vitamix here at home and we make green smoothies every morning, but we went on vacation to a vacation rental place and I was like, oh, I'm sure they have a blender there. And they did, but it'd been so long. This sounds so snobby. I'm sorry. It'd been so long since I'd used another blender. It was terrible. It had this like chunky ass smoothie that I didn't want to drink. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Vitamix are super duper powerful.
Yeah. I feel like Rick kind of forgot that too when he's like, you don't have to strain out. I'm like, you are using a Vitamix, sir. Nothing is surviving that.
Like literally when you get the Vitamix, one of the things in the instruction manual is like, here's how to make soup entirely in the Vitamix. So it's very good at blending down ingredients, even down to like a silky soup texture as we see here.
I don't know, but I don't think I'll be making this just purely on the fact. Did you see how messy it was when he poured everything back into the saucepan?
Yes, when he poured the sauce into the sizzling hot lard, it exploded everywhere. And he was like, I'll clean that up later.
It was all over the walls.
Yeah.
It traveled.
And it's this dark red sauce. You know that's going to be a bitch to clean up.
I am not doing that, Rick. I'm sorry.
Not on the top of my list of recipes to make either, but we'll see as the season progresses, I suppose.
Speaking of, I read through the linked recipe on Food52, and he writes in it, quote, you can make this a vegan dish by using a neutral oil instead of the lard and vegetable stock instead of the water for a bit more oomph.
Good tips.
Yeah, like I said, he's got us in mind, but also... Since I've only ever seen it like on chicken, I kind of need also that tip of what to serve with.
Yeah. Listeners, maybe tell us some suggestions for something veggie that you could put mole on.
Please do.
So I think this was a good foot to start on. It does seem like it's very representative of the show as a whole. It's almost like they found their footing pretty immediately. I don't think the format changes too much as the show progresses. So it's a good start. It's a good hook. it's interesting to have the little blast to the past because this was before Rick moved to Mexico permanently. He was there to research his upcoming cookbook, Mi Cocina. And we see him talking in this episode about like, oh, it's so beautiful here. And it's so nice to be away from frigid New York. And we get all these beautiful B-roll images of sunny Mexico.
Yeah.
So it's fun to watch.
He basically just quarantined there.
Exactly. But we know that he loved it so much that he's moved there permanently now.
Speaking of Mi Cocina, Food52 has been dropping a new show from Rick instead of this show, Mi Cocina, which is recipes from his new cookbook.
Yeah, so it's funny that we started Sweet Heat now because it seems like maybe Mi Cocina has just supplanted it. We're not really sure if Sweet Heat will return. It seems like maybe not. And now there's just this companion show to his upcoming cookbook that comes out very soon. But if you like Sweet Heat, I'm sure that you would like Mi Cocina as well. Obviously, it's still with Rick. It's still produced by Food52. Pretty similar content.
Indeed.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, get ourselves some animal crackers, and we'll be right back to talk about Sohla and Rick swapping cookies. All right, we're back, and we're here to talk about another episode of Sweet Heat. This one is Sohla and Rick swap cookies. And shows.
And personalities.
And personalities, yeah. The YouTube description is just in time for the holidays. You can see when this episode was released. It was released around Christmas. Sohla El-Waylly and Rick Martinez are swapping cookies and shows. Food52's resident Sohla makes a spicy tostada toffee that brings sweet heat, while resident Sugar Man goes off script using pistachios, honey, and a touch of crema to make lacy, delicious Florentines. So just for a little bit more context, at the time, Sohla was hosting a Food52 show of her own called Off Script with Sohla El-Waylly. And basically, she would show you multiple ways to make the same core recipe based off of freestyling with what you have at home. And so for this episode, they decided to swap hosts and concepts. We can see that Sohla tries to make a sweet and spicy dessert, whereas Rick is riffing on the classic Florentine. He's going off script, in other words. This feels like a blast to the past, too. This was very early post-BA days.
You know, I'm like, and in this essay, I will explain why I love Sohla so much.
Yeah, it was really nice to see her again. I mean, I know that we did a whole season on Sohla, which was the Babish show, Stump Sohla. And it wasn't that long ago, but I'm like, oh, it's so nice to see her again.
Just love her so much. This episode, though, was chaotic.
Oh my God, pure chaos. Sohla is always a little bit chaotic, but so bringing that chaotic Sohla energy, and then the way that this was put together, it was crazy.
Yeah, and then like Rick emulating Sohla's chaos.
That did not work for me. His weird little Sohla-esque intro. It took me a while to even realize what he was trying to do. I was just like, is Rick okay?
Me too. I said, what is going on with this ingredients talking? Is this his Sohla impression? What?
Yeah, so when we first get Rick introing his cookies, he's like, if you don't have flour, that's fine. You can use chicharrones. If you don't have this, that's fine. You can... And he's going on these wacky ingredients. And finally, I thought, oh, he's going off script. But yeah, it did not land for me. The execution wasn't right. And also it was filmed before he had set up his kitchen to look nice and beautiful. So he's just talking with this very bare, sterile, pure white, empty background behind him. It was just not a good segment.
Yeah, I think a lot of this episode didn't land because they kept going back and forth, but they also had different styles. So it's like they tried to keep the two looks of the two separate shows, but parallel edit them together. And oh God, it was...
Yeah, on the one hand...
just hang on.
Yeah. On the one hand, I kind of understand why they went with that, but it didn't work in execution for me. So we we flip between Rick and Sohla. So it's like, let's start with Rick, and then we'll check in with Sohla, and then it just goes back and forth for the whole episode. It's loosely structured around the same steps. It'll be like, oh, here's the sticky part for both recipes. So it'll have Sohla making the toffee, or it'll have Rick making the honey butter mixture. But if you were actually trying to make either of these recipes by following along with this video, it would be impossible. It would be the opposite of helpful.
Mm-hmm. I think they should have just been 2 separate episodes.
I think so too. 2 separate episodes, or even just, it might not be as dynamic, but even having like, here's Rick making his recipe, and now here's Sohla making her recipe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And the production style and value is so different. So Rick has a whole crew there with him, whereas Sohla is in her apartment in New York with her husband Ham, filming on it looks to be his phone. I know they had other cameras, mm-hmm. but it was very disparate and it just did not go well together.
Yeah, although love a ham cam.
Love a ham cam. Love a Clementine cameo.
Yeah, it was just the whiplash in this.
Whiplash, that's a good way to put it.
But there were so many things like I loved in this too.
Same.
Like Sohla's like intro where she's just walking her dog by piles of garbage.
And she kicks a pile of garbage and then she body checks a guy walking along the street.
I love the prompt of like, okay, this is New York. We're gonna
yes.
we're gonna compare like New York, like dirty, gross New York with beautiful Mazatlán.
Yeah, there was a lot of humor to this. I did like that concept. Like, let's show the very stereotypical idea of New York, and plus it's dreary and wintry, whereas beautiful, sunny, tropical Mexico, and Rick's just having the chillest time of his life. I did like the humor to that. Sohla's always funny. This was another thing. Since it was a swap/crossover episode, I expected there to be more direct interaction between Rick and Sohla, which is great because they bounce off each other so well. But it was mostly them filming separately. And then at the very end, we get a couple minutes of them chatting with each other. And I would have liked to see more of that interaction, although that was a little bit fraught too because there was lag. You know, it was the Zoom era.
Yeah. The 2 dishes, mm-hmm. I was actually more interested in Sohla's. The tostada toffee with toasty, chewy toppings.
I was interested in this too.
Like, I could make this.
It looks easy. It looks
mm-hmm.
very tasty. I like that it's a very Sohla recipe. She gets a lot of her ingredients pre-made or store-bought, which she's not
she had to buy
to
everything
do.
From the bodega.
Yeah. Talk about flashbacks to Stump Sohla. I was definitely thinking about the 5-course bodega menu.
Oh my god. She's probably filming at like the same time-ish. I don't know. Who knows? But yes, same vibes.
Yeah, and being in tune with her off-script theme, the toppings that you can put on this are very much up to you and what you have on hand. So basically, she just generally suggests roasted nuts of some kind and fruits of some kind. So she put apricots and peanuts and pepitas and white mulberries, which probably no one has, but that's fine. That's the thing. You can still make this recipe and put, I don't know, craisins or something instead on top, and it would still be good.
Heck yeah. That was the other thing. I have a lot of these things. I make oatmeal every day. It's kind of the same thing. Fruits and nuts and seeds. So I was like, oh, I'll just hit up my like oatmeal pantry section.
Yeah, exactly. I also like that, unlike Rick, she said you don't have to temper the chocolate. You just sprinkle a lot of chocolate on top and wait until it melts itself. So that's nice and easy.
Yeah, that was, I wrote the note, tempering chocolate, I'm out.
Yeah.
For Rick's. He's like, I'm doing it because Sohla would do it. And I'm like, Well,
this is funny to me because I feel like I'm reading too much into this episode from the lens of coming off of the Bon Appetit drama, because Sohla at the end of the Bon Appetit era was kind of the tag team person where if anyone couldn't temper chocolate, they were like, Sohla, come help us. And she would come demonstrate how to temper chocolate. So I wonder if Rick said that because, you know, that was still top of mind. Like, oh, Sohla was always helping people with tempering chocolate in the BA kitchen. And also Rick says, no shade for the holidays, but everyone should know how to temper chocolate. And I was like, is that subtle shade at Claire Saffitz, or am I just reading way too much into this?
I don't know.
I don't know.
What did you think of the Florentines?
Florentines are a cookie that I've always been somewhat interested in making. But, you know, when you want a cookie, at least when I want a cookie, I get a craving for like a chocolate chip cookie or a peanut butter cookie. And Florentines are like these delicate, fancy things that you would serve to guests or, you know, maybe at like, I don't know, a baby shower or something like that. So they're still not top of list for me to try, but I did like Rick's recipe. I like pistachios. For some reason, he made it look a little bit easier to me than other Florentines I've seen. Like, for example, Nadia Bakes made Florentines, and hers looked intimidating to me. I'm not sure why, but Rick's didn't. If I were to make Florentines, I would probably try his.
I agree. I've seen people make Florentines a few times. These ones, Jabibo on some season. They're an interesting recipe that I am intrigued by. And also in this, they call them nutty nudes.
Nutty nudes.
Which I'm less intrigued by.
Sohla said that she thought Florentines was too stuffy. She thought it was too stuffy of a name for a cookie, so they decided to rename it. Yeah, I don't know if Nutty Nudes is the winner.
No.
Rick also said, if you have the nuts to make this, which I thought was funny. It's like, if you have the balls to make these cookies, you can.
We've got nuts, Rick. We've got nuts.
Exactly. So I have a production question for you. They didn't really send each other these cookies, did they? I think they just made each other's recipe.
I don't know, they may have, but then also just thinking about the time in which shipping anything was difficult.
It was height of pandemic. She was in New York City. He's in Mexico. I don't foresee that either of these cookies would have kept well in transit.
They just showed like a basic like white box thing, and I think she showed it twice.
After it was tossed to her. That also reminded me of Gourmet Makes. Sorry, I almost said Gourmet Takes. I'm like, what's the name of our show?
That's us.
What's the name of the real show? It reminded me of a lot of Gourmet Takes of stuff being tossed at Claire. But yeah, I don't think they actually sent the cookies to each other. I don't think it was a real cookie swap. I think it was a little bit of TV magic that they just sent each other the recipe and then made it themselves at home.
That would be probably maybe easier for them to do.
I also thought that Sohla was laughing a little too much about like, thanks so much for sending me your cookies, Rick. Like it was kind of like a joke.
Gotcha.
Again,
Social
I'm reading
cues.
way too much into this episode. But no, I thought both the recipes looked good. It was a fun episode, aside from the chaotic editing.
It's wacky. There'll be better ones.
There will be better ones. All right, that's going to do it for our thoughts on Sweet Heat for this episode. But of course, we'll be back with more next episode. In the meantime, let's move over to the back burner. First up on the back burner, we already mentioned this. There's a brand new Food52 series with Rick Martinez called Mi Cocina, and it is a companion series to his cookbook of the same name. I haven't watched any of these yet, but I probably will.
So I'm too busy in Sweet Heat land.
In Sweet Heat land.
Yeah, I almost watched like another Sweet Heat episode too after this, but I was like, no, I'll get confused.
Too much Rick. Well, no, there's never too much Rick.
Speaking of, there's been a lot of Rick lately.
In fact, we have even more Rick on our back burner. This has been in the works for a while. We've mentioned it before. Rick Martinez and Carla Lolly Music have finally released the first episode of their new podcast called Borderline Salty. It's very much in the vein of Samin Nosrat's Home Cooking. They take phone calls from listeners and answer cooking conundrums. So it is that type of podcast. What do you think of the first episode, Justine?
I thought it was cute.
I thought it was cute, too.
I feel like they definitely hand-picked questions that related to things that they had content about. Like,
True.
As soon as they brought up how to flip pancakes, I was like, oh, yeah, like the pancakes Carla makes for her son all the time. They even brought up this mole.
Exactly, which I'm sure is in his cookbook. So yeah, plugs everywhere.
What did you think?
I like their personalities. I love them both, so it's fun to see them together. I do think it's a little overproduced in the sense that they have very clear segments in the show. I mean, we do too, but it seemed like everything was very scripted, like read word for word, like, oh, here's the part where we do this, and now here's the part where we do this. And maybe it's just that they need to maybe relax a little bit more, but I really felt like often they were reading from a script, whereas I feel like these two especially shine when they're just being off the cuff, when they're just joking with each other. Like if you watch Carla's cooking show, she just does and says crazy, wacky shit that is obviously not scripted. So I would like to see a little bit more of that side of their personalities.
I love their back burner section.
Yeah, they have their own back burner. They call it something else. I mean, I like ours because it's on theme with cooking. Theirs is called Rad or Bad.
Ours is better.
Ours is much better.
But I like that they watched a TikTok video and they like analyzed it and be like, is this possible or would this be good? Which is, you don't get a lot of discourse on TikTok. You just like view the video. I mean, there's a comment section, but I mean, it's like any comment section. But the videos, since they're so short, are very tightly edited down. And especially cooking videos, you don't get like a lot of explanation or instructions.
Right. No, I think it's a fun segment. I think that TikTok is a rich mine for them to find content to talk about, because we all know that there's a bunch of wacky TikTok food trends. So I don't think that well will be drying up for them anytime soon. And I don't know, maybe we should call in with a question.
Yeah, but we have to think about like their content though. I'd be like, hey, Carla, I've got so much broccoli that I don't know what to do with.
Yeah. She really likes her broccoli. Ooh, maybe a brothy beans question. Hey, Carla.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinions on beans?
Exactly. If I was back-to-back chef with someone, how would I describe?
All right, we know the angle now.
Yep. Time for some botulism.
This episode is really a flashback to Bon Appetit. Yes, we're here to talk about Brad Leone and botulism. So Brad has come under fire. He's in hot water, shall we say, for making maybe less than safe recipes as far as food handling practices goes. So most recently, he was accused of making bad pastrami, which instead of curing with salt, as is typically done, he used celery instead. And some commenters said that it gave him the poops.
I can totally picture Brad saying, like, sorry about your diarrhea, bud.
Yeah, so the title of the New York Post article that covered this story said, Bon Appetit chef Brad Leone defends atrocious recipe, quote, sorry for your diarrhea.
Oh, man, this is just not good, Brad. And this is their, second scandal in the past year? They had to take down a seafood recipe?
This is not the first time. Exactly. So the pastrami recipe hasn't been pulled. The content is still out there. But there was a seafood canning It's Alive episode that apparently they deemed was too unsafe to keep up on the internet. So they actually removed that content. So we'll see what happens with the pastrami video.
Damn. Well, at least they put a warning on it. Ugh. Botulism.
Brad doesn't even think botulism exists anymore, so I can see how this would happen.
Yeah. But I do like, in this article, they mentioned sort of like the science behind why this may work for some and not others is because, you know, the content of the celery is not going to be the same for each person depending on like how it's grown.
Right. There's too much variation.
Salt is salt. Yeah.
Exactly. Not a lot of variation in the same type of salt. Don't take food handling advice from Brad Leone. And we have one last thing on our back burner. I was also recently a guest on the podcast Happily Ever Aftermath, so go check that out. I went on Diana Rajek Skonnord's podcast. We all love her here, and I talked about the movie Armageddon.
Oh my gosh.
Speaking of animal crackers, go listen to it. It was a fun episode. We have some other shout outs. Thank you to everyone who has left us comments on Instagram and elsewhere online. A bunch of people thought that Justine's 7-ingredient vegan key lime pies looked delicious, and they did. This was a recipe by the Minimalist Baker, who also chimed in and said, "Good job, Justine." The Sweet Life of Sydney and Hey Jen Owens were also drooling over those key lime pies.
They're so easy, you should make them.
Yes, I was checking out the recipe too. It looks good. Thanks to Ravenel for leaving us some very thoughtful comments on stovetop cooking versus baking. We really love to get into these conversations with our listeners, and we're glad that you're listening and that you had some thoughts on what we had to say. Thanks to Mary, aka Mom, for saying that she thought all of our potluck dishes sounded delicious, and she was looking forward to our new season. So we hope you're enjoying Sweet Heat so far. And finally, thank you to Vibrant Visionaries and Friends with Alyssa, who said that Amanda's grilled cheese looked yummo.
Yummo. People love their cheese. People were also leaving what cheese they put on their grilled cheese sandwiches.
Yeah, Heidi of Vibrant Visionaries uses cheddar. Classic choice. Tried and true.
The grilled cheese sandwich was the last dairy thing that I consumed before going fully.
Good choice.
My transition from vegetarian to vegan. My last was a grilled cheese.
One final grilled cheese.
Yes.
All right, and if you're enjoying the podcast, you can also let us know by leaving a positive review wherever you listen to us. And if you do leave a positive review, we'll share it right here on the podcast and thank you personally. And be sure to check out our merch at podappetit.threadless.com. You can get shirts, you can get beach towels, you can get tote bags, you can get masks, just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for our next episode, we actually have a bonus before we come back to you with more Sweet Heat. So we have another Reddit talk coming up, this time with Erin Gleason, who is a cookbook author. Her new book coming out is called Forest Feast Road Trip. So stay tuned for that bonus episode. It will be a recording of our live Reddit talk on April 22nd. And then after that, our next episode, we're returning to Sweet Heat to talk about fried tomato sandwiches with lemon, basil, sour cream, and twice baked sweet potatoes and veggies with spicy tahini. And we'll be sure to link to these videos on social so that you can follow along with us. Thanks for listening.
Yum!
Yummo.
Yummo! Thanks for listening to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
We'd love to hear from you, so find us on Twitter and Instagram at pod_appétit.
And on Facebook at Pod Appétit Podcast.
You can also email us at podappetitpodcast@gmail.com and find all of our episodes on our website, podappetitpodcast.com.
Hi, this is Mouse.
I'm Weens.
We have the Mouse and Weens podcast.
Mouse and Weens.
I'm a big sister in San Diego with kids, and I'm married.
And I have no friends. No, I'm just kidding. No, I do. I have friends. I just don't have any boyfriends or love. Anyway, Mouse and Weens podcast. You should listen to it.
Yeah, it's
not
really
depressing.
Fun. We talk about family stories, life and love, and kids, and all the things you're interested in. We promise.
Yay!
Celebrities in Hollywood, too.
Poke your little turtle head out and come listen to us.
Mouse and Weens. Bye.
Bye.